Hello, everyone. Welcome back to 360 on History podcast. I'm your host, Saima Beg, and today we are in East Africa. In the highlands of northern Ethiopia's Tigray region is a city called Aksum, a city that used to be part of the kingdom of Aksum. We know of this kingdom from the hundreds of obelisks and stelas that cover the fields on the outskirts of this current city, and we will come to them later. Let's start with the history of this kingdom of Aksum. This kingdom dominated the Horn of Africa and the Red Sea region for most of the first millennium AD. It was contemporary with that other big empire, the Roman Empire. And just like Rome, the kingdom of Aksum also began with a city. From the city of Aksum came the empire, whose kings had dominion over a large area comprising parts of modern day Ethiopia, Eritrea, Sudan, and the southern Arabian Peninsula. The rulers and people of Aksum traded with regions from Iberia to India, and perhaps even as far as China. But they were not just traders. Although they did rule trading networks, they were also fierce warriors. They were highly literate, boasting of accomplished artists and engineers among their numbers. In addition to the amazing obelisks and stelae that I mentioned before, they also issued their own gold coins. Now, we do know a little bit about them, but not much, because what we know of Africa is from the Western perspective, and that has been either concentrated on Egypt or it has been deeply flawed, based entirely on Western agendas and thinking. But when we delve through history, we find the kingdom of Aksum. For example, there was a 3rd century AD Persian prophet called Mani who referred to Aksum as one of the world's four great empires, along with the Romans, the Persians, and the Chinese. Because of the lack of research into this region, we do not really know much about the Aksumites and how they became a kingdom. The origins of the kingdom of Aksum remain a subject of debate and are challenging to determine precisely. While the kingdom reached its peak between the 4th and 6th centuries AD, its roots can be traced back to much earlier in the Horn of Africa. Archaeologists identify these early stages as the pre Aksumite and Proto Aksumite periods, laying the foundation for the later Aksumite civilization. What we do know is that before the establishment of Aksum, Eritrea and the Tigray Plateau of northern Ethiopia was home to a kingdom known as Demit, located in present day Eritrea and the northern Tigray region of Ethiopia. Now, I'm pronouncing this as Demit, which I think what it is, but please do go and check it because I could be wrong. It is thought that this kingdom was influenced by the Sabaeans from the region around modern day Yemen, whose presence lasted for just a few decades, but it influenced the later Aksumite civilization, such as in the adoption of ancient South Arabian script, which developed into the Ge'ez script of Ethiopia, as well as the adoption of the ancient Semitic religion. These people living in the Ethiopian highlands also traded with Egypt and Nubia at this time. So, this was not some isolated kingdom. Archaeology has shown that in the mid 1st millennium BC, a community inhabited the site of Beta Georgis on a hilltop northwest of Aksum. Going further back, Stone Age artifacts have also been unearthed at Gobedra, 2 kilometers west of Aksum. Evidence from excavations in the Stele Park at the heart of Aksum corroborates continuous activity in the area from the outset of the Common Era. Two hills and two streams lie on the east and west expanses of the city of Aksum, perhaps providing the initial impetus for settling this area. There is archaeological evidence suggesting that the Aksumite polity arose between 150 BC and 150 AD. It seems that small scale district kingdoms with large communities and maybe one or more elite residences existed in this early period. According to British archaeologist Stuart Munro Hay, quite probably the kingdom was a confederacy, one of which was led by a district level king who commanded the allegiance of other petty kings within the Aksumite realm. However, the most prosperous period of Aksum was between the 4th and the 6th centuries AD. The main hub of the Ethiopian highlands in the first millennium BC, however, lies in Yeha, which is 30 miles northeast of Aksum. This site contains some of the oldest and largest standing architecture in sub Saharan Africa. There is a building now known as the Great Temple dedicated to the Sabaean moon god Almaka. This amazing temple was constructed around 700 BC from rectangular blocks, some of which are 10 feet wide. Even today, it is still more than 45 feet tall. The temple has been studied for over 100 years, but not much work has been done to understand the surrounding areas. So, no major urban sites were found initially. The thriving city of Aksum, the kingdom's capital, is replete with stelae, obelisks, tombs, and even ruins of ancient buildings, all providing evidence of a once thriving economic and cultural center. The modern town of Aksum is, in fact, built on top of this ancient capital, and this has made it difficult to excavate the site and reveal more of the empire's history. But we do see the largest of some of the ancient monuments toppled on its side and broken into section. It was carved with doors and windows and probably looked like a 13-story building that once stood 100 feet or 30 meters tall. This great stela weighs more than 570 tons and was hewn from a single block of rock. The granite like rock was likely obtained from a quarry 2.5 miles or 4 kilometers away. This amazing stela is more than 3 times the height of the Moai statues on Easter Island. Not only that, it is 20 times heavier than the biggest sarsen stones at Stonehenge in Britain, making it one of the largest monolithic structures ever built and transported. What a feat! Now, in 2009, Johns Hopkins University archaeologist Michael Harrower and his team from the Southern Red Sea Archaeological Histories Project decided to investigate the area north of Yeha. Local residents kept telling him of a place called Beta Samadhi. So they decided to find it. And they found it after a 9-minute walk from Yeha near the modern village of Idaga Tabu. Here, they saw clear signs of an urban area. Scattered pottery fragments and stone remains from ancient structures could be seen strewn all over the landscape, making Beta Samadhi one of the most important Aksumite sites ever to be found. The ancient town of Beta Samadhi is perched on top of a hill rising 80 feet above the surrounding valley, covering an impressive 50 acres, equivalent to around 40 football fields. Its well preserved ruins, some reaching a depth of 10 feet, reveal a settlement that thrived for over 1,300 years, from the 8th century BC to the 7th century AD. Beta Samadhi's history spans both the pre Aksumite and Aksumite periods, flourishing during Aksum's peak as a vital center for production, trade, religion, and administration, closely connected to the Aksumite capital. Harrower's team uncovered a complex network of stone walls and interconnected rooms, which indicated both residential and commercial use. Notably, the walls appear to have been constructed in a single coordinated effort. Within these structures, they also discovered a range of artifacts, including dishes, bowls, storage vessels, grinding stones, and remains of animals and plants, evidence of food production, storage, and consumption as well. More unexpectedly, they found signs of metal and glass manufacturing, challenging the long held belief that all glass found at Axumite sites was imported from the Roman world. Heror and his team have also worked in the ancient port of Adulis. Both Beta Samadhi and Adulis have revealed what life was like 1,700 years ago in that region by showcasing sophisticated building techniques, the importance of Christianity on the local culture, as well as the existence of the aforementioned trade networks that were key to the kingdom's success. The influence of Christianity was also discovered at the base of the hill where Beta Samadhi is situated. A large structure measuring 60 feet long by 40 feet wide was found, as well as a stone block and small stone pendant, both of which contained inscription in Ge'ez, an ancient Ethiopian language. The writing on the pendant had the word venerable next to what appeared to be an image of a cross. The stone block had an incomplete inscription, roughly translated as, "To this entrance, Christ be favorable to us." This enabled the team to conclude that this was actually an early Christian basilica. When wheat and barley seeds from this site were radiocarbon dated, the date that emerged was around 4th century AD, meaning that this was around the time the basilica was built. This shows that it was one of the oldest, perhaps even the oldest known churches in that part of the world. Now, this makes absolute sense because, as per Ethiopian tradition, the Axumites were among the first people to accept Christianity. There is a legend that King Ezana of Aksum was converted to Christianity by his childhood tutor, Saint Frumentius. And King Ezana reigned from AD 325 to 360. Originally from Lebanon, Frumentius became the head of the Ethiopian church and its first bishop. Coins minted during Ezana's reign provide evidence of this conversion. In the early years of his rule, Ezana's coins featured his image alongside a small crescent and disk, which were symbols linked to the pagan southern Arabian deities. However, in later years, this iconography was replaced by a single cross, reflecting the embrace of Christianity. It seems that Aksum converted to Christianity in the 4th century, earlier than almost any other major kingdom, perhaps even earlier than Rome itself. And this was due to the regular contact and cultural exchanges the kingdom had with other civilizations through this extensive trade networks. The empire's strategic location provided access to the interior of Africa, while its position along the Red Sea facilitated connections with diverse peoples and cultures across the Arabian Peninsula, from Nubia to the Gulf of Aden and beyond. Excavations have revealed amphorae from Jordan, glass beads from the eastern Mediterranean, and Roman pottery produced in North Africa. This extensive cultural exchange led to a diverse, multilingual society infiltrating from its main, internationally renowned port and second most important city, Adulis. Similar to Egypt's Rosetta Stone, the 4th century AD Ezana stone documents King Ezana's achievements in three languages: Greek, the Ethiopian Ge'ez, and Sabaean. Alongside the arrival of foreign languages and artifacts came a flow of new ideas and beliefs, including, of course, Christianity. Adulis received most of Red Sea maritime traffic in the 1st century AD, as is evident from its mention as an important trade center in the Periplus of the Erythraean Sea, a 1st century AD travel guide to the Red Sea and Indian Ocean, as well as in the Roman author Pliny the Elder's Natural History, written around the same time. Adulis was the place from where wealth was distributed to the rest of the empire. Although it covered around 100 acres, only 5% has been explored. After the initial adoption of Christianity by King Ezana in the 4th century, it took a couple of hundred years for it to spread throughout the kingdom, reaching Adulis in the 6th century, which then became replete with churches, monks, and priests. The ruins of 100 feet or 30 meters long and 65 feet or almost 20 meters wide complex, built atop a 10-foot high or 3 meters high podium, were uncovered in Adulis. Its plan was typical of a Christian basilica and it was dated to be from the 6th century AD. The inside of the structure was once full of pillars and columns, as well as ornate stone window slabs, chancel screens, and decorated walls. The marble and much of its other decorations were imported from the Mediterranean and from as far afield as the Pyrenees Mountains, 3,000 miles or 4,828 kilometers away. And excavations have revealed other imported goods, such as amphorae from Syria, a statue from India, in addition to Chinese ceramics. Adulis was clearly an important port at this time. What happened to Aksum? It is thought that the kingdom faced decline due to various factors, not least climate change. Adulis' coastline receded away into the Red Sea, away from the main city. That once great port lost its ability to serve as an international hub and its economic importance diminished. Plus, repeated Persian conquests and the rise of Islam in the Arabian Peninsula in the 7th century AD would also have an impact. Historians suggest that by the 8th century AD, Muslim settlers had established control over the Dalag archipelago, a strategically important group of islands off the coast of Adulis. This shift in power may have led to the Axumites gradually losing their dominions over the Red Sea trade networks, which had been the foundation of their wealth and expansion. Ancient civilizations from Africa have always remained on the sidelines, even though the region is full of archaeological treasures. Sudan and Ethiopia are a testament to this. The little research that has taken place in the region that the kingdom of Aksum once encompassed has shown as much. Unfortunately, the area has been under violent conflict in recent years, not only dangerously impacting the lives of people, but also halting any research that could have taken place there. Eventually, though, hopefully peace may come to the people of Aksum once again, and we will be able to find out more about their ancient and glorious past. Thank you for joining me on 360 on History podcast. Please check out the website 360 on History. Join us on all our social media. We are everywhere. And please also check out our YouTube channel 360 on History. And do give us a shout out when you do. See you next time.